Well, Faster My good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line for a Friday. It is the 22nd of May. Alex sitting in for Andy today. Now, you heard on the news there, the government announced in 2024 that they were going to find £50 million worth of savings, and in the first year they found 4. One backbench MHK thinks it's going to be big on headlines, low on detail. Is it just a case of that no matter how much you cut, we just don't earn enough as an island? This is one of the things that is almost secondary, I think, that Andy kind of points out when we talk about the offshore wind farm debate. And it's not about the power, it's about leasing our seabed to make money. And the question is, whether you're for a wind farm or not, if you widen the argument to the fact that the island needs to make more money in order to sustain ourselves, treat it like a household income, that the Isle of Man, makes a certain amount in and we're spending more than we earn. Well, if we feel that we can't cut any more without making very difficult decisions or losing services that we hold dear, you're going to have to make some bold decisions and bold ideas with some vision to make more money, be more entrepreneurial as an island, and that might be unpopular. Or do you flip it on its head and think that actually, no, we don't need to make more money, we should live within our means, and what are you willing to give up on? Okay? Do you want to have roads with more potholes? Do you want less services at the hospital? Do you want longer waiting lists for the fact that that you feel that we should be living within our means? I don't know. It's an interesting question, and I'd love to hear your opinions, as always. 66 13 68 is the number to call. Let's go straight to the lines, and Peter's on line 1. It's afternoon. Good afternoon, Peter.
Oh, good afternoon. It's Peter Milcott here. Just about the recommended amendments to the assisted dying bill. Mm-hmm. Now, I've gone through those and also looked through the bill as well. And there are, in actual fact, 15 amendments needed to be made, so either to the amendments or to the existing text. Now, in some cases, they're rather too complicated to describe on Mannin Line, because you'd need the bill in front of you to see what I was talking about.
Right.
So I'm just going to confine it to 3 places, which is amenable to public broadcasting in the sense of the audience being able to understand what I mean.
Right, okay, go on.
Right. There is a new safeguard whereby, under certain circumstances, the doctor, they have to engage in a safeguarding assessment, and under certain prescribed circumstances, they should refer the request to the safeguarding board. That's fine. The only problem is that suppose the safeguarding board gives the thumbs down, on whatever grounds, to the request. It does not have to be followed, which is obviously a massive weakness and a massive hole in your safeguarding. It says that either doctor would have to have regard to it. Now, have regard means what it says. It means, I take it, that he would have to read it seriously, reflect upon it, but at the end of the road, he could still go ahead with the process of the assisted suicide, which, of course, is legally what it is. So that's the first one. So there's a gaping hole there. The second one is that when doctors have to refer to the safeguarding board, there is a provision whereby the department, it lists 5 areas where they would make regulations, but here is another gap in it. Remember, doctor won't necessarily be aware of all the nuances of referring to the safeguarding board, and these regulations are supposed to fill that gap. There's only one problem. The legislature has a discretion whether to make them. Well, that it just says they may make them. So that leaves the doctor in the dark if they don't get round to making them. The may should certainly be must. They must make regulations as to what process you follow if you're going to have a safeguard. Now, the third area, and this is the only one that's really amenable to talking about on the radio, is there is an existing provision whereby either the attending doctor or the independent doctor can refer the request to a registered psychiatrist if they have any doubts about the voluntariness of the request or the capacity. Though I put that in, actually that particular part does need amending itself. It's actually deficient in a way, but I'll leave that aside. The problem is it goes to the psychiatrist. Now, that will cost money, and yet, suppose the psychiatrist says your doubts are well-founded, the doctor doesn't have to follow that. It's quite clear in the existing bill that it's only information to enable the doctor to take his decision. So I ask myself, what is the point of having safeguards whereby you go to the safeguarding board under certain circumstances, or you go to a registered psychiatrist, which will cost money, and at the end of the road you don't have to follow it? So the safeguards, what I'm saying is, leave aside all the other parts that need looking at. The safeguards are completely inadequate.
No, I take your point from that, Peter. Yes, it does sound as if there is a lot of discretion in there. We seem to find this a lot in Manx legislation, and in practice, discretion is not necessarily a good thing. And I'm not just talking about in this particular bill. I'm talking about in legislation generally. The question I put to you, Peter, is that forgetting the topic of this legislation and not getting into an ethical argument for a moment, but it does seem like, effectively, we put together some bad legislation with the best of intentions from our end. It went across, they marked our homework and said it wasn't good enough. And then the speed of which we seem to have rushed all these little amendments, it seems to be concerning, as if we're throwing them through. Do you think that's a good summation of the...
I think that is a very fair point. Very, very fair point. Your problem is... Remember that in England, when they were discussing this legislation in the House of Lords, there were a large number of amendments moved to it which didn't actually get considered because of their time schedule. Here, what will happen, I take it, that the only place where this can be considered is before Tynwald under the standing orders. Tynwald has a very heavy agenda anyway. The amount of time that will be able to be given to it will be limited, but leave aside that. Some of the issues that need to be considered are sophisticated, and they do not lend themselves to just a single session. You really need a select committee or a body of people who can, at their leisure, go through it very carefully. Let me explain to you. In drawing up these gaps and problems with it, I had just the tabled amendments, and I do not exaggerate, I spent 8 hours just going through the tabled amendments. I had to do it with great, great care because every single word is potentially a problem. I then went through the original bill, and I spent really 8 hours on one day, and then I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I spent the whole of a morning of the next day, and even then, I'm not satisfied that this is completely foolproof, that there may be other things that I haven't spotted. And so it's not going to get that sort of consideration. So really, the whole process now is very, very unsatisfactory, and it's likely to be rushed, and rushed legislation is always bad legislation.
That's the part that concerns me. Not necessarily, as I say, we're not getting to the ethical argument here because we're obviously very aware of your stance on that. That in terms of the legislation, they almost seem to have come up with these amendments quicker than they come up with a plan for the horse trams. And I would argue that the assisted dying is most definitely worthy of more consideration and is a more serious topic than they spend working out the business case of a horse tram.
Well, absolutely yes. And so really, we're very, very close to the general election now. We're very close to the dissolution of the Keys, and quite frankly, it comes down to this. They haven't, for the rest of this parliamentary time, they have not got the time to devote to this legislation that it needs. And that's really the bottom line, which I think you're agreeing with me about.
Well, I have no opinion. I was just being devil's
No,
advocate there.
just
But
on
yes.
We're talking technicals here. We're not talking about, and everything that I'm saying here is not actually on it. We're talking on the procedural question and not the substantive question of whether this should be going through in the first place. We're talking here about the process of considering it, and the process is very unsatisfactory and will be so, and will be seen to be so. Anyway, I hope my call just alerts one or two people to this question. If it does, then it will be a telephone call well spent.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you for your opinion. As always, great to have your contribution. Peter there highlighting some of the issues he feels with the amendments that have been proposed to the assisted dying bill. Quirky's on. Now, here we go. Let's see. Is the phone line going to work? David Quirky, you there?
Line 3 is listening.
Oh, yes. I've got you loud and clear. There we go. Line 3's got you.
Now, the UK Parliament yesterday passed a few different legislative issues.
They did.
One was to have... You still there?
I'm still here.
All right. Free bus travel for children in August, I think it is going to be, this year. Mm-hmm. So if we're reciprocal on the VAT agreement, can't we do the same thing? And she also mentioned, too, about having discounted structures for theme parks.
Yes.
Groudle Railway could be one of them.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
The Wildlife Park could be the other one, couldn't it? And you'll have to lower your VAT.
This was it. I was yesterday. I was away hosting the event at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and I was speaking to the managing director there, Amanda Thompson. She's been lobbying hard for the UK to lower VAT on attractions and hospitalities, including theme parks, as you say, because the business is struggling, and the UK government has listened. So, do you feel that that's going to happen over here? Does it automatically happen?
No. Somebody has to think, because our biggest theme park is Timbled and the Keys, and that's going to close in July, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't get a fast pass to get in there on that one. But but visitor attractions and things that you will pay to take your family to, yes, there is VAT on that, isn't there?
Yeah, and we should be using it. Can you imagine if the Steam Packet Company, which is a business that's owned by us, the taxpayers, said to any kids that come on the boat is free, you know? It's going to give us more visitors. There's going to be more people flowing in and out. The business will make money here, won't they? That's the issue. We're not creative enough. And the other thing, when they mentioned about they were supposed to say 50 million, wasn't it? And they've only done 4. Mm-hmm. So whose fault was that? It's not the taxpayer.
Well, according to Laurie Hooper, of course, who's announced that he's intending to stand again, his point was that the reason is that government has trouble making difficult decisions. Do you agree with that?
I definitely do. 100% agree with it. They're difficult trying to make decisions on minor stuff that they should be doing. You look at, I'll rant on about now housing. The major thing last time for the election was to do with housing. What have they done? Hardly anything. Somebody mentioned, I think on the radio there, about down at Lake Road there. But the apartments there are 250,000 apiece. They're not first-time buyers, are they, Alex?
No, you wouldn't get a first-time buyer being able to afford that. You're right. I mean, when we did the coverage of the election last time, you're right that the topic that kept on coming up was housing. And then if you anecdotally speak to people, and I know this is quite a flippant line to say, so I put that caveat in there, but if you speak to people now, what's the Parliament done in the last 5 years? And they go,
Nothing.
they've done the Bishop's vote, and that was it.
Well, yes.
There's nothing that actually the electorate wanted them to do. They perceive has been done, and I think that's going to be a conversation they're all going to have on the doorstep, isn't it?
And that's why we need a change, and I'll leave it at that.
Brilliant.
Nice to speak to you, lad.
Likewise, take care. Cheers, Quirky. Lovely. Thank you very much for that. Just to update you on, because thank you very much, producer Chris Quirt, for giving me some information here. What David Quirt was going on about there, in the UK government's new Great British Summer Savings Package, as they're calling it. It's free bus travel in England for all children aged 5 to 15 throughout August, and there's no registration required for that. A temporary VAT cut from 20% to 5% on many family attractions between June and September. So that's theme parks, zoos, museums, fairs, soft play centres. The same VAT reduction also applying to children's cinema tickets, theatre tickets and concert tickets. Children's meals in restaurants and cafes are also included in the temporary VAT reduction. And the government says tariffs will be reduced or suspended on some imported food products, including biscuits, chocolates, dried fruits and nuts, aimed at lowering supermarket prices. So that might obviously have an effect here. A planned rise in fuel duty later this year has been postponed. That, once again, is from the UK government. And the measures were announced by Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the UK as part of a wider cost of living support package linked to concerns about inflation and energy prices following instability in the Middle East. Now, we've heard here when it comes to support for cost of living. Yep, that's what we've heard. Do you feel that some of these things should be followed suit here in the Isle of Man? Okay. I know the government will say they can't afford them. Well, is that the fault of you, the hard-working taxpayer? That the government's not got its house in order. Okay, because there's this report. They've saved over £4 million. Fantastic. But is it at the cost of the fact that the hard-working taxpayer is squeezed even further? Okay. Where should the priority be as far as you're concerned? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. 66 13 68 is the number to call, or you can text me, of course, 166 177. We'll get on to Julian just after this.
Bearing in mind the fast approaching September general election, May Tynwald was a relatively convivial affair. Health, brownfield sites and cannabis were just some of the highlights which we'll squeeze into perspective this week, but Ramsey Cottage Hospital, renewable energy and government's efficiency programme were also raised. Perspective is bursting at the seams this Sunday at 12 on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. We also ponder why government struggles to collect parking fines. At the moment it appears there's a fair chance you'll get fined for illegal parking, but there's a much more relaxed approach to collecting fines. Trailer lure seems to be the common theme in this week's show.
Mega offers on Waltons this Saturday and Bank Holiday Monday. Mega offers on in-stock TVs. In fact, offers throughout the electrical store. Come to Waltons on Isle of Man Business Park opposite Robinson's, or check out Waltons online for our latest offers. Waltons Mega offers this Bank Holiday.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland, for three-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
For a wide range of wood-burning stoves and a complete installation service, visit The Snug in Ramsey. And we don't stop there. Kiln-dried firewood and full aftercare service, including chimney sweeps and maintenance. Call The Snug in Ramsey.
They may try to offer you a tasty carrot. Perhaps they'll try to give you some stick. But whatever you do, don't become a money mule. It's just not worth the risk. Don't let anyone move money through your bank account, however tempted you may be. You could end up facing serious consequences, including a criminal record, bank account closure, as well as difficulty securing loans or credit in the future. A message brought to you by Isle of Man Bankers Association, Financial Crime Partnership, the IOM Constabulary and Cyber Security Centre for the Isle of Man. For further information, visit csc.gov.im.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
Ramsey Garden Centre have new stock arriving every week. There's something for everyone, whether for indoors or outside, plants, bedding, decorative or solar lights. Ramsey Garden Centre are open every day over the bank holiday, including Bank Holiday Monday.
Manx Radio.
Manx Radio's Mannin Line. Alex with you on a Friday through until 1 o'clock. It's an open line. You can talk about anything you like, 66 13 68. Peter has already been on with details about the assisted dying bill amendments and his opinion on that. And we talked about whether you feel that the legislation is being rushed through. Also, we've been talking about whether the changes in the UK VAT and free bus travel and things like this to assist people with the cost of living over the summer, especially hard-working families, those should be replicated here on the Isle of Man. Do you think that the government's not doing enough? It's got its fingers in its ears when the public are crying out for something like that. Should we be more creative? Well, I'd like to hear your opinion. 66 13 68. Julian has been waiting patiently. Good afternoon, Julian. How are you doing?
All right, how are you, Alex?
I'm not so bad, mate. How are you? The weather. I'll start with Andy's line. The weather in Douglas not looking so marvellous at the moment.
No, I was out on the bike earlier, and I think it'll be all right. So I'm looking forward to 20 degrees on next week. That'll be good.
Yeah, me too.
You mentioned the horse tram, the rails,
yes.
The route getting de-scoped, ostensibly against Tynwald's will. And I'm seeing a parallel. An article in yesterday's Manx Independent, if anyone's got one handy, on page 3 by Adrian Derbyshire titled MHK Fails in a Bid to Give Tynwald Final Say on Windfarm. The article commented on Kate Lord Brennan's attempt to call for every nationally significant windfarm application to be subject to ultimate approval by Tynwald as a final step. I've got a couple of comments on this article.
Yep.
Manx Utilities Chairman John Wannenberg and DEFRA Minister Claire Barber railed against this motion. In fact, Claire Barber tabled a counter-amendment effectively blocking a final Tynwald vote, instead continuing with the current process. And I think Claire Barber's actions yesterday confirmed the worries that were expressed at the Morvannin consenting public meeting on the 11th of May, a week last Monday, by many members of the public. Not forgetting the more than 6,500 Manx people who have now signed a petition against Morvannin. Claire Barber's actions yesterday have revealed her true agenda, I think, to get Morvannin through at any cost. She was supported in this by every unelected member of LegCo, who, of course, will remain after September's elections. So you see the parallel with the horse tram route.
Well, yes and no, because in fairness, LegCo, I'll just pick some facts here. LegCo are elected. They're not democratically directly elected, but they are elected by your democratic representatives. And in terms of Claire Barber's motion, because I've got the report in front of me that you referenced there, and Claire Barber did actually argue that existing planning and environmental assessment systems were already robust. So effectively, I would possibly postulate that what they're suggesting is that if every national planning issue that people get up in arms about on social media and go and do public meetings, and we don't look into the detail, the public do not look into the detail. They rally around. I can read out a few texts here where people are coming up with things that aren't fact, that they're not being dealt with by people who are experts, and we just decide things by who shouts the loudest. Surely we're not going to have very responsible planning and government. Now, if the planning process for these wind farms, whether you're talking the offshore or the onshore wind farm, if the planning process takes into account the locals' opinions and facts and detriment to wildlife, etc., the Ascana visual landscape, surely those procedures should stay in place rather than making it a free-for-all just for politicians to do it maybe whether they think they're getting on a bandwagon.
Well, a couple of things on that. First one is this is not any old thing. This is the largest industrial-scale mountain road high 87 Eiffel Towers. Mm-hmm. This is not just putting a hut up somewhere. Mm-hmm. And also, why is LegCo getting involved with any of these votes? They're there to do a job. They're not supposed to be setting policy, which is what we're talking about here. So I think Legco needs to keep their nose out of this.
Well, if it's in fairness, if it's Legco's going to get involved, I mean that's quite obvious, Julian. If Legco's going to get involved, if Kate Lord-Brennan has gone saying that Tynwald needs final approval, Tynwald is the House of Keys and the Legislative Council voting together. It's a dual parliament, so that's why they're getting involved, because they would have a vote. That's what Kate Lord-Brennan was proposing.
But MHK set the policy. Legco get on with implementing it.
But
so I don't know.
But Kate Lord-Brennan's proposal was to give members of Tynwald the final say over national significant wind farm development. So that's why Legco got involved, because she's proposing that they would be involved. That was a question for Kate Lord-Brennan. If you feel that only House of Keys should have the final say, well, that's a whole different thing. That's not what Kate Lord-Brennan brought to Tynwald, obviously.
I'd like to know why every member of Legco voted against the people being able to have a check on this. But anyway, my second point, I think Adrian Derbyshire should retract a sentence in yesterday's article, which is, Orsted says Morvannin will contribute around $2 billion to the Manx economy and no financial burden will fall on the taxpayer. Well, in 2024, it was reported that over $500,000 had already been spent of taxpayers' money on legal fees. And there is nothing in sight with the decommissioning policy as yet. Also, if anyone goes on the Isle of Man Government YouTube channel, look for the Morvannin Offshore Wind Farm Hearing 7, which was on the 14th of May, last Friday. Go to an hour into that video and play that 25-minute segment. Because the consenting panel tried valiantly to get a straight answer out of Orsted, DEFRA, or the DOI lawyer, Robert Garden, as to what the benefits are going to be for the Isle of Man. But there were no answers. So unless Adrian Derbyshire has access to information that the consenting panel doesn't have, he should probably make a public statement retracting the words "will contribute" for the article. Talks about the decommissioning, of the 87 Mountain Road high wind turbines. What happens if Orsted goes bust? Especially in the recent news that the Danish government is thinking of selling off their 51% stake in Orsted, which will effectively end state subsidy support for Orsted's already ailing financial situation and their 90% drop in their share price. Orsted's also mentioned in that meeting that the UK subsidy or contract for difference for Morvannin will be part of their business case. But it's worth remembering, if you remember, Alex, Morgan and Mona Wind Farm off Blackpool, right opposite us, sent a load of information sheets through our letterboxes not too long ago. That has collapsed because the increased UK subsidy was not enough for them to proceed with the project due to everything that's going on geopolitically. So during last Friday's consenting hearing at the Comus Golf Club, the chair of the consenting panel, her name's Menaka Sahai, asked Orsted's lawyer, Amy Sterling, how the panel should weigh the economic benefits against the environmental and social harms. Now, I've isolated what the Orsted lawyer said. She said, as Mr. Garden, who's our lawyer, has quite clearly set out, there is no policy for a certain level of economic benefit. I don't think you can or should seek to compare an economic benefit. I don't know how you would consider or quantify an economic benefit. I suggest that what needs to be done in the planning balance is consider whether this application meets the planning policy to deliver an offshore wind farm and weigh that against the disbenefits or harms associated with it. So what seems to be happening, Alex, is that Orsted are trying to remove the planning hurdle by effectively using a Jedi mind trick on the panel by saying, you don't need to consider the financial benefits. Just think about the shiny new wind farm, which fulfills the policy.
And do you feel that the panel are that stupid?
No, I don't. And they've been asking all the right questions, unlike Robert Garden, the lawyer that the DOI has hired from CMS Law. Even he said, the Isle of Man policy for Morvannin has no policy relating to a threshold figure for monetary benefit, only the requirement for a wind farm up to 2 gigawatt output. So even our lawyer is saying this. All of these questions were very eloquently suggested at the last week's public meeting on the 11th of May, so a week last Monday, especially Michelle Cook, who said that there really should be a whole separate day dedicated to finding out exactly what the financial benefits for the island are as weighed up against the financial analysis.
Well, just to return to your point, Julian, about Adrian Derbyshire's report and what he should retract, in your opinion. The line you cited was Ørsted says that more vanning will contribute around 2 billion to the Manx economy, around 55 million to 60 million a year, and no financial burden will fall on the Manx taxpayer. And you said that should be retracted because where does he get that information from? Well, it's directly on Ørsted's website. So as a reporter, he is reporting from Ørsted.im that states that the tax revenues and seabed rental payments paid directly to Isle of Man Treasury and the Community Investment Fund worth up to 1.5 million. That's where he gets that information from. And in terms of the no financial burden will fall on the taxpayer, that is relating to more vanning. As in the wind farm itself. So that's the semantics of the sentence. So the fact that the government has spent money in negotiating with Ørsted, the company, he's referring in the sentence to more vanning. The actual wind farm itself, when set up and, running, cost of establishment and decommissioning, according to Ørsted, will have no financial burden on the taxpayer. So in fairness to Adrian Derbyshire, his report is correct.
Yes, but he's taking the word of Ørsted as a sales pitch who are putting...
Yeah, but he's a journalist, Julian. He is reporting on what has been said, and he is reporting that.
Yes, but if you look at the consenting hearings last week, Ørsted will not be drawn on a definite figure. I mean, when the Ørsted lawyer is saying that the panel shouldn't consider the financial benefits to weigh up against the harms...
But Julian, what you're arguing is that that the reporter in this case shouldn't argue one side of the case, but it should only argue the other. He is not arguing; he is stating Ørsted's side of the argument in the same way that you're campaigning against it, and we're giving you airtime. Now, what I'm saying, purely from defending this article, that sentence is correct. It is a correct report of what the company has said. That is the journalism. So he shouldn't have to retract that.
He hasn't said that, though, has he? He said Ørsted will contribute.
No, it says Ørsted says that it will contribute, is what it says in that sentence, and that is correct. That is what Ørsted has said.
Perhaps he should put a caveat in saying that, although in the hearings there has been no policy set by the Isle of Man, and as the Ørsted lawyer has said, that they don't believe that the consenting panel should be even looking at the financial benefits to weigh it up. So that says to me that Ørsted are trying to get past this planning consent hurdle, and then we'll talk about the money later, which, I don't know, would that be behind closed doors with Treasury? I don't know. Will we ever get to know how much money is coming out of this Ørsted deal if they're telling the consenting panel that it's not relevant to them to consider the balance of the financial benefit to the harms to the island? You know what I mean? Yep. That's what Ørsted's lawyer is telling the panel.
Yeah, I'm not debating that. I'm actually just standing up for the journalist on this occasion who should not have to retract something that he has stated as fact, which is he's reported.
Right,
that's
so
what Ørsted said.
Why doesn't he put? Perhaps then the better thing to say is he should add into that statement that there has actually been no agreement on any amount of money. Even Menika Sahai even said. So what you're saying to us, Amy, is that it could be £1,000 or £2 billion. The amount of money is irrelevant to this panel hearing. And Amy agreed. Well, Amy would agree because Ørsted wants the cake and eat it, don't they?
Well, you're not going to get a journalist to say that Ørsted would agree because that's not proper balanced journalism. That's exhibiting an opinion. Yes. If you wanted a better written article, I'm sure you could drop Adrian a line. But in terms of the statement you said should be retracted, he doesn't have to retract it because it is actually correct.
I also noticed Ørsted's lawyer, Amy, she did well with this one. She made a note that the Isle of Man Wildlife Act of 1990 used to protect all the wildlife right out to the 12-mile territorial waters of the island. Mm-hmm. This changed in 2016 when the Marine Infrastructure Management Act, or the MIMA Act, was brought in. And now that's taken over the territorial sea wildlife protection, but there's hardly anything written in it. So basically what's happened is all the protections that were in the Manx Wildlife Act have been watered down, you might say, without being a pun, for the territorial waters. And Orsted has said, because of that, the protection for the wildlife, according to Manx policy, is irrelevant. So they're trying to water down the case to protect our fisheries and everything else because our Mimer Act doesn't have the necessary sentences in it to protect the wildlife. So you've got another layer of legislation that is not fit for purpose in this discussion with Orsted.
That's an interesting, as you say, watering down the legislation. We'll look into that. Okay, Julian, thanks
That's
so
on
much.
The 12th of May, yeah.
Brilliant.
All right, thanks, Alex.
Thanks for your call. Cheers. It's lovely to hear Julian's opinion. Always nice to debate with Julian. I really enjoy it when he rings in. If you would like to join in the debate, please do get in touch. 66 13 68. When it comes to the wind farm, I know it's something that people feel very, very passionately about on both sides. So I'd love to hear your comments on that. We were talking of the savings that government's had to make, or is trying to make, shall we say, which is the £50 million worth of savings that was announced at the 2024 government conference. In the first year, Chief Minister Alfred Cannon has confirmed they've made over £4 million worth of savings that have been identified. Although I do seem to know a lot of people are going to new jobs in government and things like this. I mean, where are they getting the money from? Do you feel that more could be done? Or do you feel that we need to make more money? Thank you to George. Oh, crikey, George. Now, you see, this is where I always get on my high horse about facts, as opposed to... I just can't stand it when people present opinions as facts. So, George says, "Hi, I'm fed up with the Isle of Man. Doubled subvention money at Manx Radio." Not true. Sorry, George. I know that might be, a great one to read down the pub or if you watch some trashy YouTube channels, but nope, not doubled subvention money. A crumbling Ramsey Cottage Hospital built in 1907 that'll cost more than £6 million to refurbish or knock down. I think it's the £6 million is the refurbishment cost. I don't think that's the cost of pulling it down. Years of underinvestment. Douglas Council block retailers from going to the retail park, do they? Can you give me some kind of evidence on that, George, or is once again that just pub gossip? Then cite the excuse of reduced footfall in Strand Street, a situation they created with high rents, etc. Did Douglas Council set the rents for shops in High Street? I would imagine it would be more the people who own the buildings. George says so. We're losing out again due to their failings. Well, if the whinge makes you happy, George, that's fine. But if you've got any facts or evidence of that, we'd love to hear it, and we will follow it up. The news team do follow up leads that you send us in. Big John in Ramsey, who we know is very much for renewable energy and more green initiatives. He says there are many arguments against Erie Stane, but after taking everything into consideration, there's only one main reason to support it, helping to save the planet from climate change, or at least slowing it down. Fossil fuels are speeding up climate change. I rest my case. I was interested when Julian mentioned there about the changing Wildlife Act, and whether that Wildlife Act or the protection of wildlife would have had the same. We would have had so many people ringing in if we were digging up the Kroger oil and gas from that area. Or would we have been happy with that because we wouldn't have seen it? Is it purely about people in Garth complaining that their view's going to be spoiled? Or is it about more than that? Because if it's about the view, you'll find every reason, of course, to argue against it. That you don't want these things blighting the landscape because of the birds and the fish and things like this. But it's all about the view. Now, if it would have been oil and gas we were digging up and it would have been out of sight under the seabed, would we have been so upset by it? And would the Wildlife Act have stopped us doing that? I'm not sure. I'm posing that as a question. And Steve says, regarding the assisted dying bill, which Peter rang up earlier on about, please boil this down simply for Peter, rather than getting lost in legislative detail. If he feels so strongly that he should have had the choice if he feels so strongly that he should never have the choice to use assisted dying, why is he trying so hard to deny other people that same choice to make their own decisions about their own death based purely on his personal religious beliefs? Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I see your point. I did try and point out that we weren't having the ethical argument today. When you say getting lost in legislative detail is important. Okay? when passing laws and legislation that affect us all, once it's all gone through and you find, oh, actually, that's not suited to me, or it's very unfair, or bad things happen because the legislation doesn't cover it, it's a bit too late then. So you do have to get things right. That was the legislative detail we were discussing. Mike says, here's a radical idea. How about the MHKs giving up their pay rises for a few years? Yeah, do I remember they're tied to the civil service? Good luck on that one, Mike. Fran says, how strange of Laurie Hooper to say government won't make tough decisions when it comes to making savings. Maybe he should have applied this when he was health minister with Manx Care's annual overspend and the extra cost of Summerhill View. And as a department member of the DOI, why not question the Liverpool ferry terminal when it reached 50 million? He claims to be an accountant. Priceless. Well, that's your opinion there, Fran, and I can't answer on behalf of Mr. Hooper. Just a reminder that Laurie Hooper has agreed to stand in the forthcoming election. An anonymous texter came in saying, to reduce Isle of Man healthcare costs, why not introduce a mandatory health levy of, say, £5,000 a year to cover primary health services for all new residents over the age of 60? And as a residential deposit bond of, say, £250,000 up front before being allowed to live here. Are we just basically going down the route of having private healthcare, bit by bit? And because we're so scared of ever giving up the idea of the NHS free at the point of need, that eventually we end up paying far too much for everything. And if you made the very brave decision of saying, tell you what, we're going to have private healthcare apart from just emergency treatment, and everyone has to have health insurance, would that work out cheaper in terms of your national insurance and taxes? Or am I being idealistic and thinking that the government would spend the money elsewhere? I don't know. Right, in a moment, we're going to come back to Eddie.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
Crow Isle of Man Chartered Accountants.
Remember when you used to get business advice from your bank manager? Stiff upper-lipped pillars of the community whom you called Sir? Nowadays, you can get all the advice on every business issue from the friendly, down-to-earth chaps at Crow Isle of Man. And some of the chaps are even women. Imagine! Crow Isle of Man. Global presence, local knowledge.
Crow Isle of Man. 627 335.
Many people are struggling. You can help by volunteering or making a donation to Isle of Man Food Bank, whether it be food or essential items or financial support. Please call 646 999, brought to you by Descon Office Interiors.
Wellness doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as wild swimming in crystal waters, walking cliff paths with sweeping views, or cycling quiet island lanes. On the islands of Guernsey, you can do it all. Across 5 islands that you can hop between with ease: Guernsey, Herm, Sark, Alderney, Liu. Each one is different, but all of them are a breath of fresh air. Reconnect with nature. Reconnect with yourself. Start your wellness journey at visitguernsey.com.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
Alex with you for about another, about 5 or 10 minutes before we head to the top of the hour, when Beth will be along with 1 to 3. It's the Mannin Line. It's your chance to get onto the radio, 66 13 68, with your opinion on any topic. And Eddie's been waiting patiently. Good afternoon, Eddie. How are you?
I've got a lot of patience.
Glad to hear it, mate.
Problem. I've had a lot of phone calls. I've been away for a short while in Ireland, so I missed something, and I've had a lot of phone calls to people telling me how good, and I think some of your associates were involved in it, the voting for the, what should we call them?
It's, are you talking about the IM1 voting for dummies at Peel?
That's the one, yeah. I believe it's absolutely hilarious. Has it gone to a podcast?
Not yet. The plan is it is our satirical programme. We run a radio programme maybe about 2 or 3 times a year. I think the next one's on Tynwald Day. And we also do the occasional live show as well, which this one was. And it's planned that it's going to be broadcast live on the radio, made a podcast, but they're editing it down at the moment.
Lovely. Very good report, so well done to your associates.
Yeah, it regularly gets nominated for awards in the UK, the Industry ARIA Award. So we're very proud of it.
Good. Just listening in to one or two things again.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the day before yesterday. You had the students on yesterday, didn't you?
Yes.
And for the love of money, I can't believe that we still got the likes of Claire Barber and so on thinking about believing a single thing that Norstead coming up with. I missed a few points out the day before yesterday, one of which was I've been going to nearly every meeting, whether it be the MEA or Norstead, Orsted in it.
Yes, it's Orsted. For the offshore wind farm, it's Orsted. The MUA is our onshore one, yes.
That's right. Well, I've been to more or less all the meetings since I got involved in it. And I meant to mention the other day a recall of one that you had at Union Mills. And it was Orsted doing that. And one of the people in the audience asked a question about the fisheries, what effect it would have. Now, I can remember the very words that they said, that if the wind turbines go up, fishing will have the right of way in between all of the wind turbines. Now, isn't it funny that over the years, we know that to be a lie? You cannot fish between them because of the cables. Fishing is more or less banned. All the fishermen up Scotland, across the water in Morecambe Bay, up in arms about it. So the likes of Claire Barber should know that you cannot fish between the turbines. Our great mate Wilf, God bless him, told us over and over again, you lose your fishing industry. Right? So the other thing is, like Julian was pointing out earlier, the shares in this company have gone absolutely ridiculous. Why would anybody in the right mind think of investing in a company which is on the verge of going bust? And also, there are so many reasons why it would wreck the Isle of Man just on the gamble. You don't need any sense at all just to say, let's put it to bed once and for all. We do not want a wind farm.
When you say that it could, bankrupt the Isle of Man, we're talking about the wind farm offshore or onshore here, because the offshore one is purely about money rental. It's land rental, whether we allow people to build it effectively on our land, isn't it? So how would that bankrupt the island, do you mean?
Well, you've just heard the statements from Julian, and we've gone over this again and again and again. Nobody will come up with a figure that we're going to get. So we don't even know. So you can't give them the permission until you know these things for black and white.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't even be entertaining them until they put it in black and white.
But in terms of bankrupting the island, where's the bankruptcy, the cost going to come to us from that? I agree with you. Yeah, you don't rent something out until you've agreed your rental. But where's the bankruptcy bit?
But if we haven't got any agreements whatsoever about how much electricity we'll be allowed to get.
No, we don't. It's not about the electricity. Andy's made this point many times. The offshore, I agree. The onshore is us. The offshore is purely about renting out our seabed to make money, not about getting electricity for us. So yeah.
Right, then where do we get our electricity from at that point? If we give them the permission, say, right, and then we start to buy electricity from them.
Well, no,
right? They can name the price they hold us to ransom.
Well, the wind farm we'd be using for our electricity would be the Erie Staine one. If that goes ahead, the Orsted one is purely about renting out our seabed, and the power won't come to us.
Yeah, well, let's correct it. The Orsted, the Isle of Man one, Erie Staine, will never go ahead.
In your opinion?
Well, the majority of the people on the Isle of Man do not want it, so it won't go ahead. It's not cost effective anyway, and it means that the Isle of Man government would be running it, and that's a laughing stock, isn't it?
Well,
so it won't go ahead.
Yeah, they don't have the greatest track record in capital projects, let's be honest.
Right, but it won't go ahead. We know it won't go ahead. We've got so many people against it now. It is unbelievable, Alex. It just won't go ahead. But just look at all the scenarios. I said it the other day before the students were on. We've got so many different ways of creating electricity on the Isle of Man, and we're still going down that one track of wind and solar. There is something very suspicious about it all. I keep saying to all the younger folks, when I speak to the students, if you're going to go for anything, it's got to be 24/7, right? Now, both of the two things that they're going for are not 24/7. So why on earth are we even thinking about it?
Well, I suppose it's purely driven by the fact of whether it's emission free or not. And you're right, solar isn't 24/7. However, solar normally has to be done in conjunction with batteries. And likewise, I suppose that a wind farm is part of a package, isn't it, of measures that reduce the amount of emissions.
No, we don't talk about emissions, please, because both of the two things you're talking about are two of the worst polluters in the world. Where does all these rare chemicals come from? I don't know how many times we put information out there. What about the border of China and Mongolia? There's a lake there the size of Wales. It's toxic waste from the byproducts that we use to put turbines up and solar panels. So it's not green, and it's not clean.
Oh, I didn't say it was green or clean. I just said it cut down on our emissions, which is a very different thing, as you pointed out there, Eddie. I'm going to have to go. I'm running out of time, but it's lovely to speak to you. Cheers, Eddie. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you very much there, Eddie. Just to clarify, Eddie was talking about the confusion with fishing. In terms of being able to fish between the wind farm... what are they called? Basically, the turbines. Transit is allowed. Some fishing methods can continue between turbines: potting, crabbing, lobster fishing, static gear, and of course rod and line. It's the mobile bottom towed gear, like the large trawler nets, and dredges and scallop dredging and things like that. Face restrictions. So there we go. Thank you for your company this afternoon. It's been lovely having a good old chinwag, hasn't it? Andy will be back on the Mannin Line on Monday. Stick around. Beth Espy is up next with 1 to 3. Thank you to my producer, Chris Quirk. I shall be back on the afternoon show. Oh, no, not Monday. It's a bank holiday. See you Tuesday. Ta-da.